Let's continue getting reaction to the briefing. We are joined now by energy expert Ted Blom. Ted, thank you very much for your time this morning. Before we get into some of the details that were shared with Andre and his team this morning, what were your initial thoughts on what they had to say to South Africa about the state of affairs at Eskom?
Good morning to your listeners. The situation, I think, is very dire, and rightly it's been called so by the Eskom management. But we've now had stories for over 2.5 years from Eskom blaming this power station, blaming that power station, blaming this. But if you go back and you sit back a little bit and you look at what they've been saying for the last nearly 3 years, it's the same old story, same old, same old. And any competent management team would say, hey guys, why are we repeating the same mistakes? Why are we having the same incidents time and time again? I can guarantee you there are power stations very, very similar, if not identical to South Africa's coal fleet, that are operating perfectly all over the world. In fact, in Europe, they are busy opening up old power stations that are much older than Eskom's power stations, and they will also be operating perfectly. So the problem to me seems to be management and political interference. You can't keep on blaming the workers or the engines for breakdowns and the fallovers. There's got to be something bigger. You got to stand back and say, what is the bigger picture? And the bigger picture is that, and it's confirmed by Eskom's crowdsourcing for skills now and cry for help from all sorts of quarters. But the fact of the matter is that there's been mismanagement at Eskom at a gross level, and the current competency has got to be questioned. You cannot have new management in place for 3 years and you still have the same problems, which they promised themselves to have sorted out within 18 months. So I've lost total confidence in the current management team at Eskom, as well as the political leadership, because it's clear that there's been a lot of political interference, especially as far as the mix of the fleet is concerned, allocation of funds, cutting off budgets of maintenance, etc., etc. It's a total disaster, and South Africans, it's time where they need to wake up and hold Eskom and the political leadership to account.
But Ted, so it sounds like you'd be part of the cohort that is calling for Andre de Ruyter to step down as Eskom CEO. The problem, though, is that other analysts that we've spoken to throughout the morning say that changing the management won't necessarily improve the situation at Eskom. So calling for his head is probably not ideal at the moment.
I had my reservations from day one. In fact, before day one, because he started earlier than what he was supposed to start. So the fact of the matter is, you cannot expect people who have steered us into this precipice, or over the precipice, into this cavern of darkness, to be the same people to fix it up. If they knew better, then you must accuse them and charge them with treason and mismanagement. The fact of the matter is, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know better, and that's why they messed the system up. So that's why I'm calling for new blood.
But it's interesting because a lot of the issues that exist at Eskom are legacy issues that existed long before the management team arrived. And so them navigating, fixing the situation is a lot more difficult than they would have thought. In fact, one of the things that was said by Andre was the acknowledgement that the coal fleet, that's incredibly old, and they are now going out as soon as tomorrow morning to procure from IPPs and other industrials like a SAPI or a Sasol tomorrow.
Well, you're obviously reading the Eskom narrative. I don't agree with it that the stations are excessively old. In fact, if you flew on a Boeing 747 in the last year or 2 or 3, that aircraft would have been close to 40 years old, but properly maintained. The issue is not whether the age of the plant. The issue is the level of maintenance and the level of confidence in the maintenance program. And it's clear that in the last 3 years, there's been major interventions to the negative. In fact, it's longer than 3 years. It also extends to the previous leadership of Eskom, which is also politically appointed. Just go back 5 years. 5 years ago, this same plant, which is now incredibly old according to your records and your narrative, was capable of performing without any load shedding. Why? Because there was competent leadership in place. I'm not endorsing that leadership, and I'm not endorsing their misdemeanors. The fact of the matter is, with competent leadership, better results are possible, and I can guarantee you that. I come from Eskom. I've been running alongside Eskom for more than 30 years.
So what would you say then, in the absence of taking action against the current management team at Eskom, And apart from the procuring of IPP and also from other industrials from tomorrow, an immediate to medium-term solution so that South Africans and the economy at large, Ted, can be brought out of these stage 6 blackouts, which could probably get worse?
Well, the fact of the matter is that if we stuck to what we said we were going to do, and that is to fix up the old plant and get the OEMs in and get rid of the pirate parts, 3 years ago when Mr. De Ruyter took office, that was his pledge. He then deviated from that pledge, and in fact, he went further. He cut the maintenance budgets, and so enabling himself to boast about early repayment of Eskom's loans of over 83 billion or 82 billion, if my memory serves me correctly. So the fact of the matter is, I don't care what the current narrative of Eskom is. It's a pack of lies. There's been deliberate mismanagement towards a different agenda to force South Africa and Eskom into renewables. And it's very clear that even with 100 gigawatts of renewables, you cannot sort out the peak problems of missing baseload. Not in South Africa, which is a primary energy or primary activity type of country with mining and smelting and heavy industry. And there's no renewable energy without storage in the world that can sort out that peak time problem with that technology. You need to stick to what works, and that's where Eskom has deviated from the path. They've neglected the old fleet. They've deliberately cut back on maintenance. They've deliberately changed the skill sets of their organization to get rid of people that are skilled, etc., etc. I mean, the list is long, and it's a legacy list because it's been ongoing since 2001 when Eskom was commercialized. Prior to that, it was run as a non-profit entity for close to 90 years, and was at that stage rated as one of the top utilities in the world. You've got to be a genius to turn the top utility in the world into the poor state, disaster state that the Eskom is in now. You really need to be an exceptional genius to be able to mess things up so bad.
It has been messed up quite royally indeed, Ted. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Ted Blom, their energy expert, speaking to us about the briefing that Eskom held this morning and some of his thoughts on the way forward for the power utility.